breakfast time here in Adelaide, and I don't know about the team around me. Jonathan Agnew, what's on your breakfast wish list this morning?
I think I'll go for that granola. That's been rather good, actually.
Yeah.
Homegrown granola.
Healthy option, homegrown granola. Jeff Lemon?
Well, linguistically speaking, you have to link marmalade with Adelaide.
Okay, so marmalade and Adelaide in one beautifully composed sentence. So that's how it's looking here, chappers. We are feeling positive. We're very much looking forward to the next few days in Adelaide, and we'll see you later.
Enjoy.
He's gone. Oh, he has gone now. We are. The 5 Live Cricket Show is live from Adelaide at breakfast time. It's the second Men's Ashes Test, which is less than 6.5 hours away from starting now. England, of course, looking to level the series at 1-1 after their big defeat at the Gabba last week. You can listen to ball-by-ball commentary of the day-nighter from Test Match Special on Sports Extra from 4 a.m. tomorrow morning, and I'll be bringing you updates all the way through breakfast. But yes, we are at breakfast time in Adelaide, and it's a lovely day. It's absolutely glorious. Blue sky up above, not too hot today. It's been warm all week. Tomorrow the temperature is set to hit 38 degrees. There is a Christmas tree in the lobby here, and there's a massive Christmas tree on the square outside, which feels completely unreal as somebody who's never spent Christmas in warm climes. But apart from Aggers, apart from Jeff, we've got our very own Phil Tufnell back in the UK. We've got him on a little screen. We can wave at him.
Hello, all.
Morning,
Talk about rubbing it in. Crikey, O'Reilly. Breakfast, blue skies, tea, and a lovely little courtyard for breakfast. Wow. I hope you're enjoying yourselves.
Yeah, well, we are enjoying it, and we are very conscious of how how grim things are back at home in lots of ways. So we hope to bring you a bit of hope, bit of sunshine, bit of joy over the coming few days of this day-night test match. And that's the strange thing. When I say 6.5 hours to go till the start of play, that feels a bit weird to me even now, having done a few day-night matches. I mean, Jeff, you've done every single day-night match that Australia have played. What do you do with these blank 6 hours?
Well, you get up early, you do some breakfast radio, and then I suppose in between you find yourself, I don't know, maybe you do some stretches, have a perambulation, pop into a museum, or go back to bed. There are so many options.
Is that the players' plan, Jonathan, do you think?
Well, it is an odd one because the timings are completely out. So the players will sleep late, breakfast late, but you are still conscious that actually it's all very well to say that, but actually you don't. You still wake up at the normal time, and there is quite a lot of sort of filling to do, but conscious of the fact that by 12 o'clock in their case they'll be at the ground. So they're just very long days. I know the players find them exhausting, and in the heat that we're going to have over this next week, it is going to be a very hot test match. This. It's like playing in a different time zone for a while. You get transported off to a different place, and you're playing at night, and it's all a bit strange. They netted obviously yesterday, quite a long time, but they did it actually still under daylight. Really, I mean they started at 6, so they didn't really make use of some of their brilliant nets down here. They've got full floodlights, and you really can, if you want, make the most of that twilight zone that takes you into night time, which can make these day-night games quite awkward for batsmen in particular. But they actually did most of their netting in daylight actually yesterday. I'm not sure why, but we shall find out how that's panned out today.
Absolutely. Tafas, how would you have coped with day-night tests? I'm kind of thinking you'd had extra sleeping options during the day, which wouldn't have necessarily been a bad thing.
Well, I did most of my best work at night, Ellie. So I would have quite enjoyed it. I seemed to come alive when the lights went down a little bit. So I quite liked it. I mean, it's just a completely different atmosphere, isn't it? Everything's light, everything's bright, everything's lit up. So it is a completely different atmosphere. I was just thinking, I'm sure John's gone for his run. He always goes for his early morning run, so he would have been all right.
A bit early for that, Tuff, if I'm honest.
No,
right,
it's
well,
exciting.
Let's try and talk about... Yeah, it is exciting, and we know that when the sun goes down at Adelaide Oval as well, it's the most beautiful sight of the red sunset.
Here particularly, I mean, it becomes a circus down there. It may be a bit less so this year because they've got some restrictions on the crowd numbers, but it's a party atmosphere at Adelaide, and for an Ashes Test, every seat that can be filled will be filled at the start, and then after about an hour, half of them will be empty because everyone's out the back at the hospitality venues. But I'm not sure how they'll manage those with the restrictions.
Let's talk about who's going to play then from an England point of view. I mean, we kind of pretty much know the Australian team, so it'll be Jai Richardson for Josh Hazlewood and no other changes. Would you say that's the likely option? Good. Right, that's the Australian team.
Unless there's a David Warner emergency and they've been fudging that, but I don't think they have.
Okay. Well, we'll come back to David Warner in a second because there's always so much to say. But from an England point of view, Jonathan, so the 12 the same as Brisbane, except that Jimmy Anderson is swapped in for Mark Wood. So are England going to play Jack Leach again, or are they going to play with an all-seam attack?
The Anderson for Wood is the only thing we can say for sure. That will happen. Mark Wood isn't playing, and Anderson will. But we still don't know. In fact, the team didn't know last night what their final 11 is, which is quite strange. I mean, normally, even if they don't tell the media, they do at least tell the players so they know. And there's a little bit of chuntering, but the players need to know the night before if they're playing or not, and they didn't. So that probably means that England aren't sure. I'll say again, it is going to be hot, and that's not rubbing anything in. It's just going to be a very hot game. And there is all the afternoon session to play in that heat. The pitch looked dry from the distance that we're allowed to look at it from. It's a drop-in pitch. It did look brown. And you think they've got to play a spinner, but do they? I mean, if you heard the interview that I did with Joe Root the other day, I basically said, why don't you rate yourself a bit more? Because, not many off-spinners have got 5 for 8. I know it was an absolute minefield, but he also bowled very well against South Africa until he got hammered in his last over. But, I mean, he can bowl. And interestingly, he bowled a lot in the nets yesterday. I was watching him bowling to Ollie Pope a lot, in fact. But whether Root believes that he can do that job, which is really, at the moment, it looks to be a holding job. Whether Root believes that he can do it or not remains to be seen. But that's the team that I would have played at Brisbane. I mean, they got themselves in a mess here. I think they've got their teams the wrong way round, and that you would have had Root doing that job in Brisbane and play Broad, and then you'd probably have had Leach playing here and tinkered with the seam bowling a bit. But they've got themselves in a mess because Leach got hammered. They can't drop their frontline spinner after one game because the Aussies targeted him and did so very well. But it does feel as if they need to play a spinner here. But they've got a problem then with who bats at number 8. And you feel that in that lineup, really only Wokes can do that. There's Dom Bess in the wings, but he got hammered against Australia A the other day. So they've got very few options, and it looks as if it's possible that Broad might not play again. But we should just have to wait and see.
Tuffers, what do you think?
Got themselves in a pickle, as Aggers was saying there, haven't they? I mean, I think, having looked at the weather, having listened to the curator of the Adelaide Oval, even he says that it's probably going to spin. History says that Nathan Lyon has taken wickets and been a part of it, even during down the day-night game as well. So I think they've got to play a spinner. As you say, it's a shame Dom Bess got smashed in the A game or the Lions game, because he could have actually done a holding job spinning it away from the left-handers. 4 left-handers in that top 7 and does contribute with the bat, but he's not even in the 12. I'm not sure. They've got themselves in a big pickle. I have played in the sides with 4 batsmen that can't bat in 10, 11, 10, 9 and 8, and that is a tail. I mean, that will just get blown away, that tail. So I'm thinking with Aggers, we've all been ranting and raving that Broad should play and what have you, but now you look in the balance of this side and you think that it's going to have to be Wokes. I mean, Anderson plays, Robinson plays, they are nailed on, and then it's, as you say, Broad or Wokes with the spinner for me. Isn't it funny? You know what I mean? It's been an absolute horror show for England with the bat over the last couple of years, and a horror show up at the Gabba with the bat. And I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're all going to talk about the bowlers and which ones should be dropped and which ones should be played. It's the same whole time, every time.
It's always the bowlers who get dumped.
Yeah, well, you can have the best bowling plan in the world for the 4th innings, but if you get bowled out for 147 in the first innings, then it's a bit pointless, really, isn't it? And Jeff, the question about the spinners is an interesting one, isn't it? But we were talking about this yesterday. That do you kind of look at the way England have looked at their spinning legacy post Graham Swan, if you like, and think, what has happened?
Yeah, they had a beautiful stopgap in Moeen Ali for a while, but there was always this indecision about what he was as a spinner and what sort of job he was supposed to be doing. And in the last couple of years especially, it's just been absolutely jumbled. You go back to the India tour earlier this year, where obviously Moeen getting COVID in Sri Lanka and having to isolate throws a stick in the spokes. But, they get Leach and Bess going for a little while, play them in the first test, then drop one for the second test to bring in Moeen, then send him home so that he can come back to sit on the bench for 5 T20s that he didn't play. But it was very important that he be there rather than playing in the third and fourth test and then going home.
Played the IPL.
But yeah, by which time they've got in the head of Dom Bess. He's lost confidence in his bowling. They've lost confidence. They pick him again, and of course he doesn't bowl well, but that's his fault now because he's the bowler. And then Jack Leach sits on the pine for the whole English summer and watches them play 4 quicks, having also played 4 quicks in Ahmedabad, mind you. I mean, I still wake up in the middle of the night scratching my head about that decision. But so that might
the
be
rotation didn't work on all sorts of fronts. The players didn't like it because they denied caps and they were going home all over the place. So I mean, if you've heard the Ashes programs that I've been doing, the thought and the expense and the theories and all of that went into this year of preparation for the Ashes. And yet they picked the wrong team.
Yes.
I mean, how much more basic can you get? You can have people doing rest and rotating and everything else. But what's the point if you just get them and then just pick the wrong team at the first possible occasion?
And then it does feel like that's why they haven't wanted to go with 4 quicks in Brisbane and maybe here when they're reacting to having made that mistake earlier, when possibly that might have been the clever play here.
Yeah.
But the fact that Woakes gets picked for his batting is bizarre to me. That makes no sense to be making that decision based on whether a bowler can bat.
No.
I tell you what just strikes me about the spinning options with both of the 2 spinners which we've just been mentioning there is that I don't know whether the England backroom staff and Joe Root actually rate them, and I think that's why they've got into this sort of quandary about the spin bowlers, because if you spin a Australia aren't talking about Nathan Lyon, whether he bowls on a green top or whether he shouldn't bowl or anything. He's in the side and he does a job and he's part of that unit. I think with both of these spin bowlers, I think that they haven't got any confidence in them, which then erodes their confidence and everything. I don't think they've been handled very well and what have you, but I just think that I don't know whether they think that they can do a holding job, and especially after Leach has then just gone round the park up in the Gabba, I think it's just highlighted it even more. What do we do? Can Root fill in or something? You've got to have a spin bowler that in the first innings can hold and get a couple of wickets, and then as the game progresses, comes into it more and more and has the potential of getting a 4 or a 5 for a winning of the game. And I just don't think that they can do that.
Well, Joe Root was bowling quite a lot of the nets yesterday, so we'll see whether that's the option they go with.
But it's too much to be putting on him. He's already doing all of the batting for a side. And as
all of the batting.
Phil said earlier, well, basically, I mean, you take out that partnership was 159 with Root and Milan. I think it was 18 for 280 for everybody else for the rest of the match. So you can't then ask that guy to do the spinner's job as well. Would you mind? Could you do the keeping every second over as well? Would that be too much to ask?
Lunch?
Let's talk about the pink ball.
Lunch?
So we've talked about the pink ball. So this has been the narrative going into this series, hasn't it? That the pink ball test here in Adelaide, and then the final test will be a pink ball test as well, a day nighter in Hobart. But this is going to favour England. The pink ball will favour England because we've got Jimmy Anderson, Stuart Broad.
Well, not favour. I mean,
but it gives them a
chance. Level it up a bit. Yeah. I mean, Australia are still firm favourites, but the pink ball does level it up a little bit.
But you only get a chance if you manage to hit that sweet spot of bowling at that particular time in the evening when the light is going from day to night and the ball is new.
And you get someone out. The problem comes when you've got new batters coming in. That's when they can be flummoxed by the conditions. So if you've got a couple of set players, we've seen that a lot in day-nighters in Australia, a set pair bats through that evening session. They don't worry too much about scoring runs, but they just get through the night session, and then they set up again the next day. Happy days, 2 full sessions.
That's why captains declare. I mean, they can declare at 8 down. I mean, England might declare at 6 down if Woakes isn't playing, and get bowling, because you do try and take advantage of that hour and a half. With new bats, and I mean it's a different sort of ball completely. The pink one, it's like sort of paint on it to try and keep its colour. So it just behaves differently to the red ball and the white ball. But you've got to. I mean, last time that England were here, Joe Root did exactly the right thing and put Australia in. It's completely different weather conditions, and England bowled abysmally in the first innings. And so again, the game was gone, and Anderson got wickets in the second, but it was too late by then. But that was when he really did start to use those conditions. But they were cool, cloudy, overcast conditions. Then this is going to be different.
And the trap with that is that those couple of sessions will be it then means you don't have a new ball coming into the evening session, and that's what's most useful to have.
Don't let
Toughest-
England get lured in, or anyone get lured in, that Australia can't play with a pink ball, please. You know, crikey. What have they won
Oh, no.
8 out of the last 8, haven't they?
They've played 8-1-8 is Australia's
Yes, there you
record.
go.
apparently.
So it's all like all of a sudden the pink ball's going to be England's saviour and everything like that. I mean, there is still a lot of cricket to be played when it is the sun is shining and what have you, as everything. So, you know, I mean, Australia are a fine side. They can bowl with a pink ball as well, so it's not going to it's not going to be easy. One iota for England, and it does level it up a little bit for sure. But wow, you know, it's still going to be tough.
Well, the man England is relying on from this point of view is Jimmy Anderson, of course, and I had a chat with him yesterday, and he told me that he spent a lot of time bowling with the pink ball after missing the first test.
Seen a lot of pink ball cricket here at Adelaide, and there's been sort of times where the bowlers have been on top, but also we've seen batters get runs. David Warner getting a big treble 100 here, so we know it's not all bowler friendly, but hopefully if you bowl at the right time, the conditions can be in your favour.
There's been a lot of talk about this pink ball test favouring you particularly. Do you feel that sort of expectation on you because of that?
I guess you always feel expectation because of various things really, but for me I've just been, since I knew I wasn't playing at Brisbane, I've just been working hard with the pink ball, trying to figure out what works and what doesn't, whether it swings at certain times of the day or whatever else, just to try and get an edge on this week. But for me, I'll just be preparing the same as I would for a red ball game. So it's still a test match at the end of the day. Got to work really hard as a bowler unit, and I'm just preparing for some hard work.
Was it frustrating not being able to affect the result of the Gabba?
Of course, it's always frustrating when you miss out on a test match, but it's all about the big picture. I think it's we've got 5 test matches in fairly quick succession, to trying to keep guys fresh. You know, we've got a great bowling group here, and we saw our guys do brilliantly in that Gabba test. You know, they beat the bat a heck of a lot. I thought they were pretty unlucky in that first innings, and they batted really well. So on the whole, we did brilliantly. And then, you know, it just shows how strong a squad we've got when myself and Stuart come back into the 12 for this week. So, like I said, it's trying to see the bigger picture for the team, and we're fully focused on getting back in the series this week.
Are you both expecting to play tomorrow?
Never expect to play, never. We'll prepare to play, and then it's down to the captain, whatever he thinks in the morning or afternoon. Don't even know what time we start. So yeah, it'll be down to the captain. We'll, as I said, we'll prepare to play and see what he thinks tomorrow.
How have nets been over the last couple of days? We've seen video of, looks like Stokesy trying to knock Joe's head off at various stages.
Yeah, I think he's trying to prove to the captain that he's fit to bowl, fit to play. The guys have been, you know, it's always frustrating when you lose a game, especially a big one like the first test of an Ashes series, and the guys have been pretty down at the end of that game, but actually it's been quite a good thing to get straight back in the nets and have a game in quite quick succession, get straight back out there and try and put things right, play a much better game than we did at the Gabba. So it's a great opportunity for everyone, whoever gets the nod tomorrow, the 11 that play. Great opportunity to get us back in this series.
And how's Jack Leach been? Because he had a bit of a torrid time at the Gabba. How's his spirits been? Have you all been kind of get rallying around him?
Yeah, absolutely. We've been rallying around him. He's been in good spirits actually. He's worked really hard the last couple of days, just making sure that his game's where he needs it to be, and that's something that can happen. You know, in not very spin-friendly conditions at the Gabba, a team like Australia can put you under pressure. We're all aware of that, and Jack's someone who, as I said, he works really hard at his game, and he has done particularly this last couple of days, and I'm sure he'll be fine this week.
Just a final one really about the pink ball. You know, we talked about it being good news potentially for England, but Australia have a record of played 8, won 8 with a pink ball. So what are you feeling about that and about the chances of bouncing back with a win here?
Well, I mean, the record means nothing, to be honest. It's all history. We can't affect that. What we can affect is the next 5 days and playing some good cricket. We know they're a very good team. They play very well in Australia. They obviously play very well here at Adelaide with the pink ball. I think we've got to focus on ourselves and playing better cricket ourselves. You know, we've got a really good team here, got a good group of players that can definitely win the Ashes. So our first step is this week, playing better cricket, like I said, and trying to get us back into the series.
Thanks, Jimmy, and of course, go well.
Cheers.
Well, that was Jimmy Anderson talking to me yesterday at Adelaide Oval. So we are talking about the second test in this men's Ashes series. England 1-0 down in the series, but the pink ball test in Adelaide, which is always a special occasion. We've actually got some cricket fans sitting with us in the courtyard here, or certainly a guy in an Australian top, so I'm guessing that he's a cricket fan. Normally you'd have lots of England fans here as well, members of the Barmy Army, all walking down the walk down King William Street, which we'll do a little bit later on today, and crossing over the Torrens River. It's the aspect walking to the ground is one of the most special in the world, I think. And I mean, tough as I know how much you love it, and we wish you were here with us, goes without saying. Wish
do.
the Barmy Army were here in force as well. But let's talk about some other aspects to England's batting, because we talked about the fact that it's easy to blame the bowlers for what went wrong, but actually the batters, and I don't want to kind of point the finger, but Rory Burns. That moment at the Gabba, Jeff, because you were there, so uniquely among all of us, you were actually there watching.
Yes.
When Mitchell Starc bowled him round his legs, first ball of the game. Aggers was on commentary as well for us. It was just one of those Ashes moments, and for him to not face the first ball in the second innings. What do you think that's done to his standing, his confidence?
Well, I'm not sure if it's hurt his confidence, because he's quite a confident player, perhaps inexplicably at times, but it's a Mitchell Starc moment. That's the kind of thing that he does, and it doesn't have to be the perfect delivery, but it will swing, it will move in the air, and it did, and that's what brought him undone. People have been talking about Rory Burns walking across his stumps for, at least through the last English season. He's obviously taken no notice of it and went even further across his stumps this time. So it was electric in the ground. I think there was a good English support turnout there, but everybody went up, because you couldn't not react. It wasn't necessarily cheering in support, but it was, I just need to make a noise, whatever that noise is, to express that I have seen this happen, because that doesn't happen. You don't get clean bowled first ball of the Ashes, and yet there we were. So, it was an adrenaline-fueled, quite electrifying moment to start things off.
Will he be a target much more, Aggers, do you think?
Well, I think the batsman will be better off for having played a game. Bear in mind, we talk so much about the lack of preparation going to Brisbane, and regardless of what happened, in a way, at least they've got a game in their legs, and they've lined a ball up, and all those things they haven't been able to do. So the batsmen have got to do their jobs. It was interesting yesterday in the nets again. They had a left-handed, very hostile ball thrower with the dog thingy, the stick. And he was hurling it down quickly. It was Mitchell Starc, albeit with a bent arm and a dog stick. But it was quick, and Rory Burns was faced that for some time yesterday. Bouncers, a lot. He really let him have it, because that's what he's going to face, and that's what, for some reason, some mad reason, opening batsmen enjoy it. I never quite understood why. Yes, he will be. You target everybody. I never quite understand that. People talk about targeting zones. You target everybody. You don't target somebody less than somebody else. Everyone's a target. So yeah, they'll be after his lack of confidence and the fact that he didn't face the first ball and went to the other end. That sort of thing, you do notice. And he'll have had a fair amount of comments, I would suggest, out there when he weighed anchor at the non-strikers end for the second innings. I can imagine what David Warner was on the field, but you can imagine the sort of chat that there would have been at him, because it was a sign of, reluctance. I don't like to say weakness, but he does have problems with his technique. Everyone knows that. He and Dom Sibley were surely two of the most unorthodox opening batsmen in world cricket, and one had to go, because you cannot succeed as regularly with a technique as those two have, as when you have a good technique, as simple as that. And when you're opening the innings, well, that's, you can't have both with techniques like that.
And Rory Burns, tough as is still England's second best batsman in terms of runs scored this year.
Yeah.
Except that Joe Root's got 1,000 runs more than him this year. But do you think he's got it in him to bounce back?
Oh, absolutely. I think Alex Stewart was coming out in his defence saying, he's a tough cookie, and he gets stuck in, and he's one of these fellas. I think that whole batting unit, really, perhaps apart from Root and Milan, just in that little partnership, I think they are all affected a little bit by the moment. The Gabba, Australia, the first test in an Ashes series, and they all just look to have ants in the pants, for want of a better word. You know what I mean? They're all a little bit scratchy, all a little bit sort of jittery, and wanting to feel bat on ball. So hopefully, I think, was it Ben Stokes said in the dressing room that they've kind of parked that first game. It's all very well and good parking that first game and sort of moving on to the next. And we heard that about Jimmy Anderson saying, listen, we can just affect this game and everything. But you've got to take experience from that first game, so that hopefully they would have all calmed down a little bit now, got into the series a bit, albeit they're 1-0 down, and just go out there and go about their business a little bit. I think Rory Burns is a good player. Okay, he has this technique which looks a little bit suspect and what have you, but, I think all those batsmen seem to me like they were trying to get to 30 before they'd got 10. So they just need to settle down a little bit, play their game, and if your technique's a little bit suspect, just, trust that technique, get a 10 or 20 and then build into it. Not try and go out there and sort of impose themselves too early. But was very impressed with Hamid. Milan as well, I thought, looked good. So there are positives there, and also, Joe Root. But, crikey O'Reilly, he needs his mates to help him out here. He really, really does.
There were some good balls bowled as well, to be fair.
Yeah.
They did bowl very well that first one.
We're going to talk about Ben Stokes. We're going to talk about the Australian team as well, and lots to go through between now and the start of the Test match. So fascinatingly set up, this, isn't it? Jonathan Agnew is with me. Jeff Lemon, Aussie cricket journalist, broadcaster, writer, and Phil Tufnell back at home. Evening time at home. 3:25 in the morning. Your time is when when Test match special go on air. And 4 o'clock in the morning is when the first ball is bowled, so that's 2:30 in the afternoon here. Although it has to be said, we haven't got these times in our head. When before I spoke to Jimmy Anderson yesterday, so I said, it's 2:30 tomorrow, and he said, I thought it was 2 o'clock. So even the players don't really get it.
We live here and we don't have the times in our head. We've got 7 different time zones in Australia, and one of them's on the 3/4 hour. Try to work it out.
Yeah, Adelaide. Currently there's a weird half hour in Adelaide, which I just about cracked Sydney. Adelaide,
there's a town called Eucla on the coast between Perth and Adelaide, and that's 8 3/4 hours ahead of Greenwich.
Wow.
It's mad. Anyway, this is the 5 Live Cricket Show, and Jonathan Agnew, Jeff Lemon, Phil Tufnell are with me, and we are live in Adelaide, England, looking to level the Ashes. And we'll be hearing from the Australian captain, Pat Cummins, shortly. But first, former Australia fast bowler Brett Lee was on 5 Live Breakfast this morning. He discussed where this Test match will be decided and what he makes of Broad and Anderson returning to the England squad.
My birthday's in November, but put it this way, it'd be like having my birthday and Christmas together. If I knew that Stuart Broad, who's got, David Warner out 12 times, dismissed him, 7 times in the last series, arguably the 2 greatest bowlers to play the game in terms of a pack. Anderson, 632 wickets, I reckon he's got Test wickets, and Broad over 500. Is a phenomenal career for both these guys. So I'm pumped for them that they're back, and we are in for a close game here in Adelaide, I can promise you.
Josh Hazlewood, one of your fast bowlers, is out of the second Test. That feels like a big loss.
Well, there's a big loss because he's such a very important cog in the wheel of the Australian cricket team. He's the McGrath-like bowls, that impeccable line length. The thing with Joshy Hazlewood, the big Hoff, as they call him, as in Hasselhoff, he doesn't vary off line or length. He's just that metronome, hits that spot day in, day out. He's got a wonderful pitch map, but that gives opportunity to other young guys coming through. And we've got one called Jai Richardson, who, when you see him bowl tomorrow, he's only played less than 3 Test matches. 2 with the pink ball he'll be including tomorrow. So he's a guy that shapes the ball out at over 140 k's an hour. So he will definitely test the top order for England.
Where's this next Test going to be won and lost, do you think?
Probably the twilight. And a lot of people don't, when you say that, they go, well, what do you mean by the twilight? And there's a certain period where the natural light and the artificial light, they kick in together. And there's about a 45-minute window where it's quite hard to pick up the ball. Mm-hmm. That's when you want to be on bowling. That's when you want to be having, your main guys on, your Broad, your Andersons, your Patrick Cummins and guys like Jai Richardson in their bowling, Mitchell Starc. If you look at what's happened recently in the Adelaide pink ball test, throughout the afternoon, it's a normal Test wicket. As the night goes on, there might be a bit of juice, so that could come into play. But that twilight is where, we've seen clumps of 3, 4 and 5 bags of wickets fall in that 45 to an hour period. So to me, that's obviously where you want to be bowling. If you're in the sheds and you got your feet up as a fast bowler, you think you'd rather than running in with the rosé coloured ball in your hand. I would have thought.
Tell you what, Brett Lee talking about the twilight zone of rosé-coloured ball. I'm kind of thinking, what are we doing watching cricket tonight? We could be just enjoying the sunset over the Adelaide skyline, over
much more
the
important
score box
than
and
any
the
of that
cathedral.
is
And all
how
that.
many heirloom carrots from the Adelaide Plains do you think they're going to be on the first day?
Oh, plenty, I hope.
6,500.
Oh, just enough.
Count the carrots.
250 kilograms of Spencer Gulf prawns and 400 kilograms of potatoes from Mount Barker.
Wow, that's just for Cameron Green.
That's what the Adelaide Advertiser tells me.
So let's talk about this Australian bowling attack then, because Jai Richardson coming in for Josh Hazlewood. David Warner, they say, is fit to play. Mm-hmm. They say is fit to play, and whether Ben Stokes particularly will be looking at that rib area again when Warner bats, it will be interesting. But talk to us about the loss of Josh Hazlewood first of all, Agus, because I mean he's probably Australia's in a strong field. He's their best bowler.
I think he's definitely their best bowler. You know, he's got pace. He bowls a brilliant length, nagging line. He normally bowls pretty long spells too. He keeps going, rhythmical. He's just a very, very fine bowler, and the sort of bowler that you want to have with a pink ball, or any ball, obviously, but particularly a pink ball in that danger time that we've talked about. And so it is a loss. So Jai Richardson's a promising fellow. He's had a really difficult start to his career, with dislocated shoulders and popping out and so on. But he's always been talked about in very promising terms, and I'm sure he'll do a good job, but. You know, it's like replacing Jimmy Anderson with a someone who's played 4 tests. You know, it is a loss. It is a loss, and England again have to make the most of that. And it'll give Cummins something to think about. When do I bowl this person? That it messes around the normal rhythm of the Australian game.
Cummins will likely take the new ball, he said, in place of Hazlewood. Hazlewood gets underrated in a way in terms of being described like Brett Lee described him, being the metronome, just hitting the same spot, because he's nastier than that.
He's big.
He's
huge.
fast.
Yeah.
He bowls above 140 most of the time. He's got the best bouncer in the Australian trio, I think, in terms of its accuracy. He's an actual headhunter when he bowls a short ball. He can swing it when he pitches up. He's a more brutal proposition than just a metronome top of off kind of bowler. So that's the difficulty in replacing it. And Richardson's an entirely different style of bowler. But I did watch his debut, his only 2 tests a couple of years ago, and it's the ability that he's got to get the ball moving both ways and to do that at pace, whether it's a new ball or an old ball. Like, that's what he's able to do at times. So I think he's even more of an attack weapon, I suppose, than Hazlewood would have been, who you'd set in for some long spells here and there.
Yeah, there was some footage, Tuffers, of Jai Richardson hitting Marnus Labuschagne. Quite a serious blow in the ribs in the net. So it's it's quite he's not to be underestimated by any means.
Absolutely not. I think he's had a fantastic Shield year as well, and what have you. He's got plenty of wickets behind him. He'll be confident. I think that Shane Warne was even saying that he should be playing in front of Mitchell Starc, shouldn't he, for the first Test match? And what he does do, as Jeff just said there, is that he will swing it. He will swing it, and that's what this pink ball does under lights. It swings more than perhaps nips. There is that little bit of seam movement, but it will swing, and he's got that in his armoury. So Jai Richardson, listen, Hazlewood is absolutely world class, but I don't think that there'll be, Jai Richardson's not that far behind. It's not going to be a huge hole in that Australian lineup for me.
And David Warner as well, with the Warner Broad battle, which we know happened in England 2 years ago, and Warner averaging 9 and a 9.5, and Warner got him Broad got him out 7 times. Is that right?
Sure.
In 8, but this is a different contest in this country, and we don't even know whether Broad's going to play.
Well, I'll equally point out the 2017-18 Ashes. Stuart Broad didn't get David Warner out once. David Warner averaged 66 and made 450 runs in the series. So 2013-14, I think Broad might have got him a couple of times, but Warner made hundreds in that series as well. So playing in Australia, he's not afraid of Stuart Broad. I don't think he'd be bothered if Broad were picked. I think this idea that there was a great psychological ascendancy to be had if Broad had taken the new ball was not the case. It's just
is it a risk? Is it a risk though to pick somebody with who's hurt his ribs and was in pain earlier in the week?
It's a risk if you have a better player or a player just as good to come in. But if that's not available, I mean, David Warner's more important to the Australian team than Steve Smith at times. He sets the tone so much at the top, and he's the one who takes on the fight. So my understanding of it is that he's sore, but it's not going to stop him from playing shots, and it's not going to get worse. So if it's just pain, he'll play through it.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I would say about those figures that Jeff recounted is he's 35 now. Certainly the Ashes time, 19, he was struggling. You know, he was, but there's a noticeable change, I thought, in that T20 World Cup. I mean, I know it's T20 cricket, but you still start striking the ball in the middle of the bat. I thought from that he looked a bit ominous going into that, but I do think that Warner would feel happier without Broad playing than playing, because. You do have the sign on somebody, and where likewise Broad will be very confident bowling to him. So that we're going back to sort of Brisbane territory there with that argument, and it's very, very different. And I think we've established that got that totally wrong. But it's that gamble that England will face today about that batting and 8, 9, 10, 11 and being a long tail as to who does play. But I think that those left-handers, Australian left-handers at Brisbane, will be pretty happy that Broad wasn't playing.
I have to say, Tuffers, there are times probably for you as well that you kind of wake up in the early hours and you start having nightmares about who's going to really damage England from an Australian point of view, and you're thinking David Warner, Steve Smith, Marnus Labuschagne, Travis Head at no point kept me awake. Having nightmares. I mean, he played brilliantly, didn't he? But this is the thing. There's always somebody lurking in. It's like kind of walking in the Australian bush. There's always something waiting to bite you unexpectedly.
Yeah. Well, that Rory gave me with that Tash when he took his lid off when he got that 100. That gave me nightmares a little bit, I must admit. But didn't see Travis Head coming with that the third fastest 100 in Test match history. Didn't see that coming. The one person I feel has just sort of like come up in all the ranks of this is Marnus Labuschagne. Played beautifully at the Gabba. Didn't get his 100 and what have you, but just knocked the stuffing out of England and confused the England bowlers. Where do I bowl it? What kind of line? What kind of length do I bowl it? Left beautifully outside the off stump. So for me, I agree with Aggers. I think that perhaps Davey Warner, not quite the player he was. Listen, we know Smith is fantastic, but he hopefully he's sort of like quite not on song. But I think England need to get rid of Marnus Labuschagne because he's, I think, becoming the leader of that pack.
Yeah, he's kind of taken on the mantle, hasn't he, Marnus Labuschagne? If you like, Steve Smith is not having the best of times at the moment, but Labuschagne is just, I mean, he's a very classy batsman indeed.
Yeah, brilliant lever of the ball. That's one of the great arts of being a Test cricket batsman and being successful is that leaving. And it sounds dull and boring, but it's such an essential part of a Test batsman's technique because you don't get drawn into nicking outside the off stump. You make the bowler change his mind and his line, and that's particularly what he does so well. And he's hungry. He's hungry for runs.
Yeah.
And yes, I think he is the standout player in that Australian batting lineup now.
And he wasn't in that T20 World Cup squad, so he's had a particularly good lead up through his Shield games and all of the rest of it. He's at top form. I didn't notice a lot of leaves being played by the English batsmen.
No, there weren't enough. Yeah, absolutely.
There could have been more. I'd note on the Australian bowling attack as well, the top 4 wicket takers in pink ball history are Mitchell Starc, Josh Hazlewood, Patrick Cummins and Nathan Lyon. So they've got 3 out of the 4. I think they've got 133 wickets between them in pink ball tests.
And the notion, I mean, dear old Shane's got a thing about Starc, it seems to be. I rather hoped he was on commentary for that first ball the other day.
I think he was. He was trying to describe it as a leg stump half volley. So
he's had a bit of a thing in for Mitchell Starc for a while, isn't he? But I mean, you can't leave Mitchell Starc out. Total variety. I mean, he can be a bit expensive. He searches a bit sometimes, looking for that full length, and he occasionally gets a bit of width. But he's that X factor when he really is. You don't know. You don't know where it's going with Mitchell.
No
Starc,
one wants to face him, basically.
No,
and that's the key. You pick the players the opposition don't want you to.
Yeah, absolutely.
And also, Nathan Lyon likes him because he just plops his big size 12s or 13s outside that off stump for him to hit as well. So off spinners always like the left armour. He's one of those impact bowlers, isn't he? He comes in. It was interesting the way he was used, actually, wasn't it? Up at the Gabby, bowled 2 overs, got a wicket, and then was taken off, But I'd have him in my side, as John was saying, for the variety and the pace and the aggression, all sorts going on.
And is that what the danger from an England point of view is, that they won't have that variety? We haven't. There isn't a left armour in England.
It's a bit samey, Ellie, this England lineup.
So if it's Robinson, Anderson, Broad and Wokes,
yeah.
then effectively you've got the same 4 bowlers.
Yeah, I mean, I think some questions were answered about Stokes to an extent. You know, 'cause, I mean, the reason that all these selections have been made is because people didn't know how fit Ben Stokes was. But he bowled a long spell in the nets. I know it doesn't count for a lot, but he did get some overs in Brisbane. He did jigger his knee up, which again is a sign of someone who perhaps isn't terribly match fit. But you know, with a game under his belt, there doesn't seem to be quite the same pressure now to play that extra seam reserve because of their being concerned about Ben Stokes. I mean, I think he'd be able to do a job with the ball, and therefore, you know, that spinner can play. But you know, I say we are guessing a bit at the moment.
I did notice as well they were working on his no ball stuff in the nets yesterday.
Right, yeah.
John Lewis, the bowling coach, kept moving Ben Stokes' bowling marker. Every delivery he'd throw it forward a couple of metres, bring it back a metre, so he was taking off from different points to make sure that he was landing the front foot every time.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, often in the nets you don't have an umpire. But usually in the nets you don't have an umpire. And just the presence of an umpire usually is enough actually for a bowler who is overstepping in the nets to come back. But it's a rhythm thing, and it gnaws away, and especially when you get a wicket, and a big wicket as he did. You know, he'll be really cross about that, but it does get into your head a bit. So they've got to get him sorted out with that.
Well, I mean, fingers crossed, all the technical stuff will work this time. DRS will work. No ball technology will work. There'll be no blackouts of pictures for 40 minutes like there were at the Gabba. So if you're staying up all night, well, you know, hopefully it will look and sound as it should do. Let's hear from Pat Cummins. His first test as Australia captain couldn't have gone much better. He's been telling Matt Clinch how they've been preparing for the pink ball.
Just get familiar with it again. It's slightly different to look at when you're batting, and as a bowler, you just feel slightly different in your hand. So I had a good session yesterday, caught some balls under lights. But yeah, it's a format we've all played a little bit now, so all pretty similar to Gabba.
Probably got to go back a couple of years. The last time yourself, Josh Hazlewood, Mitch Stark weren't all there together. Maybe almost back to Canberra. Joshy being out and Jai Richardson gets his opportunity. What sort of message do you give to Jai to try and make the most of his chance?
I think we knew he'd come in at some stage this series, just the nature of a 5 test match series, and he's been bowling beautifully for WA in the Shield cricket. So it'll just be to make sure he doesn't try and be anyone other than himself. What's got him here is just bowling really consistently, taking wickets. So just much more of the same. He's ready to go. He's played a lot of cricket this year. He hasn't played a test for a couple of years, so it's great to see him back, and he'll do well.
Obviously, you're not a selector. You mentioned in the press conference that David Warner is fit to play. From your point of view, was he always going to be likely to be right, or were there some genuine concerns?
I think we got a scan during the last test match and cleared him of any broken bones. So since then we knew he was going to be sore, but he was always really confident he could get up and play. And he's a champion and loves playing here, so he wasn't going to miss it.
From an England point of view, they probably feel like this is one of their best chances with a swinging ball. How do you try and combat that? How do you try and make sure that you have as many contributors in Adelaide as what you did in Brisbane?
I think we can look back at our record here. We've done really well, and if you look back just to last week at the Gabba, I think everyone got themselves into the series. Everyone contributed. So we're starting from scratch obviously here, but it's a ground we like playing at. It's a format we enjoy. It's going to throw up some different challenges. They might bring in a couple of different bowlers who have played with pink ball before, but I think if we can concentrate on what we did well last week, it's going to work well again here this week.
And in terms of your first test match as captain, was the challenge or the biggest challenge around field placings, when to change the bowlers, or did you get some good advice along the way?
All ran pretty smoothly in the first innings. Even the partnership between Milan and Root threw up a couple of challenges, but I enjoyed it. It was good. Made me think slightly differently to how I normally just concentrate on my bowling. But I felt like once I did get the ball in my hands, I could just concentrate on my own bowling and how I was going to look to get a wicket. So no huge challenges that I hadn't already kind of foreseen, and got a lot of help out there.
And finally, obviously, Adelaide, as a test venue, you've had a great record. It's also a great event. You'll no doubt see the members wandering from the back and out to the ground when the action's happening.
Yeah, very jealous when you see everyone out at the marquee. It's a fantastic event. You feel the buzz around town. The ground's always picturesque, and we love coming here. It's always seems like we've got friends and family who they pick one test each year. It's always the Adelaide test, so it's always great having plenty of people around and plenty of support. Can't wait.
Well, that was Pat Cummins with Matt Clinch. So Australia say they enjoy playing at Adelaide. Just remind us what happened in that India Test match at the start of the year.
India got bowled out for 36.
Good.
That was the headline. Well, Australia didn't make many runs either, but they made 180 odd, so it looks pretty good by comparison.
Yeah. Okay.
That was in the daylight, though. That was under perfect sunshine. No evening. And don't get too worried about the pitch being dry either. It looks dry, but it's actually because it's got such long grass on it. It's just the tips of the grass have dried out, so it looks like a 1990s, kind of Greg Blewett 250, Darren Lehmann 202 not out sort of pitch, but there is life in it.
Tuffers. So for this Test match, what are you thinking from an England point of view? I mean, I suppose just better. That's all we want. That's all we want.
Well, let's hope let's hope that they pick the right side, which I'm struggling with now. I'm leaning perhaps towards Wokes instead of Broad. I think you've got to play the spinner, but then hold on a minute, Wokes, Broad and Anderson, England perhaps they should be playing, but that leaves you with this long tail. I don't know. Make the right decision. It's a massive game for England, is it? I think it's a massive game for England, massive game for Root, massive game for Silverwood. England go away from here 2-0. It's done. You're not going to win 3 back-to-back Test matches against the Aussies, so it's done. So they've got to make the right decisions about when to bowl, when to declare, and get all of these things spot on if they're to have any sort of chance. Let's hope they do.
Yeah, it's brutal and it's correct. They've got to pick the right team. Again, we're guessing if they lose, that probably almost certainly is the Ashes. The Ashes gone. If we look back at that and you say, do you remember that series in which they had Stuart Broad and Jimmy Anderson, all those 1100 wickets between them, and yet only one of them played one game before the Ashes was basically gone? I mean, that would just seem ridiculous. But that's the position that they're in, and that is their fault for picking the wrong team last week, and they're paying the price. They're paying the price for that now. But I still like to try and be fair and say that last Test match, England were utterly unprepared for that. You've got to put that in there. You've got to say, because it's true. 12 days of first-class cricket. Normally they had none. So you have to throw that in there. But you can only excuse that for so long. And they've got a game under the belt now. I personally think that Jimmy Anderson and Stuart Broad, if possible, should have played in the Australia A game and got a game into their legs. They didn't do that. So those two, if they do play, and we think Anderson certainly will come into this game having not had a match. They might not have wanted to have played against Australia A, but that doesn't matter what they want. I mean, it's for the team, but they have to get it right in this game, and that's a lot of pressure on. And you're staring down the barrel. That's what professional sport's all about. And Joe Root's got to get everything right. They can't drop catches. They've got to take every opportunity that comes along, and they were off the ball in that regard in Brisbane as well. So there's lots of factors, but then that's what you have to do to get right to beat Australia. In Australia, it's not easy. Well, it is breakfast time in Adelaide at the moment. We've got a few hours to kill, as suggested by I can't just chill out, bit of yoga, bit of meditation, gentle walk along the river, as Jeff was recommending.
Bit of yoga.
Looking at the papers.
Bit of yoga.
Rising from the ashes in cricket's greatest rivalry is one headline in the Advertiser, and look out England, Aussie spearheads ready for second test is the front page of the Australian. Australia to roll the dice on Warner. That's the back page of the Australian as well, their sports section. Atlas Root needs helping hand to carry the batting lineup. That's actually Michael Atherton, formerly captain, writing for the Australian as well. And former Australian captain Michael Clarke has been on the Big Sport Breakfast this morning. And this is a big sport breakfast. I'm telling you, when we get to breakfast, that's what we're having. But he said that Joe Root's job could be on the line. I'll tell you now, if you're Joe Root, you win the toss and bowl and get beaten again. His job could be on the line. The fact that he didn't pick the two experienced bowlers for Brisbane, they lose, then he wins the toss in Adelaide, sends Australia in and loses. I don't want to be Joe Root if that happens. That is trouble. He won't do that, though. I mean, look at it.
Well, also, he doesn't pick the team.
You're not going to stick him in today.
Just quietly. He's not. Joe Root's not the selector. They've got one selector. There's no doubt about who's making the decisions, apparently, in England's power structure.
No. Okay. So Joe Root's job is not on the line if England lose?
Well, I think Michael Clark has to say some things so that people pay him attention, and we've just done him that favour.
Yeah, but if he loses the third Ashes tour here as captain, I think it's a very good chance that he will jack it in. But that's down the line. But England captains don't get sacked these days. They come to the end of the line, and it might be you take a deep breath after another Ashes defeat, and he calls it quits. But that's
or he might just be so sick of having to do this and having to drag his team around by the collars of their shirts that he might say, well, someone else can do it for a while.
And that's quite possible.
Final word to you, Tuffers?
The Aussie Tour, history shows that the Aussie Tour finishes a few off. Simple as that.
Oh, let's not go down Nathan Lyon routes here. As we said notoriously 4 years ago, careers will be finished.
A lot of Australian careers end with Ashes defeats as well, so it goes both ways.
Yeah.